Hey guys, today we are talking about quadratic inequalities. Now quadratic inequalities, just like any other inequality, we solve it just like an equation, and then we have to, graph our answer on a number line, write it in set and interval notation. So that's pretty much all we're doing today. So let's go ahead and take a look here at number one, and we're going to solve this just like I would solve my equations yesterday, right? We go through our steps. We're going to move everything to one side. We're going to set it equal to 0. We're going to factor them. We're going to solve. We're going to get our two answers. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to move my 3 over to this left side, and I'm going to get x squared minus 4x minus 12 is greater than or equal to 0. Now this is important because now everything's equal to 0, so I can so now I can factor and I can graph it out. Before we go any further, though, I wanted to remind you of a special thing that we learned whenever we did inequalities with absolute value, and it was this. It was greater than, greater than, so if it's like this or like this, that means that we're going out, right? It's going to go out to the left and out to the right. If it is instead less than, it's an and problem that's coming together. So if it's or, it's going out. If it's an and, it's coming together. So we'll have my line here like this. We'll have my 2 points, and this one's going to fill in between. And this is my less than or my less than or equal to. So this one is a greater than. So this one we know is going to go apart, but I'll show you also how to check it. All right, so we have x squared minus 4x minus 12. I'm just going to go ahead and factor this. This is where we do our x and our plus. There's no GCF or anything like that on this, so it's just going to be x minus 6 times x plus 2 is greater than or equal to 0. So listen, this x minus 6, I got x minus 6 times x plus 2 because negative 6 times 2 is negative 12. Negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4. All right, so now remember, we set both these equal to 0. We're going to go x minus 6 equals 0 and x plus 2 equals 0. And we're going to get our answer. We're going to get x equals 6 or x equals negative 2. Now we know this is an inequality, so it doesn't really help me to have these equals unless we know what our direction is. So we're going to draw a number line first. So I'm going to draw a number line out here. And on my number line, these are my key points that go on the number line. I'm going to put a point at negative 2, and I'm going to put a point at 6. Okay, now we look back at our symbol here. And I know that this symbol is a greater than or equal to. So I'm going to not have an open circle here. I'm going to have a filled in circle because it is also equal to. And then we're going to decide, is it going to go out or is it going to go in? Now here's the deal. This is a greater than or equal to, and we're just going to check. So we check to see which boxes this fills. So I always decide to just plug in 0 and see what happens if I plug in 0. So 0 is right about there, right? And so if I plugged in 0, look, 0 squared is 0 minus 4x, that's 0. So look, we have negative 12 is greater than or equal to 0 after we cancel out my x squared and my negative 4x by plugging in 0. This is not true. Negative 12 is not greater than or equal to 0. So this is not true. And so we don't fill in the inside. We're going to fill in on the outside. So I'm going to go out to the left, and I'm going to go out to the right, and that's going to be my solution. So now let's write the set notation and the interval notation for this. Remember that the set notation is just going to be fancy. It's just going to be x such that, and then we write my answers here. Look, x is greater than or equal, sorry about that. X is less than or equal to negative 2. Or x is greater than or equal to 6. All right? There is my set notation, where that's the fancy one with the x such that. Over here I have my interval notation. We're going to write negative infinity all the way to negative 2. union 6 to positive infinity. We already did this with our absolute value problem, so if you don't remember, go back and check that lesson out. Okay, let's take a look down here at number 2. So number 2, we're going to have 3x squared minus 25 is less than or equal to 2. So step number 1, move everything to one side. So I'm going to minus 2 to both sides here, okay? So we're going to get 3x squared minus 27 is less than or equal to 0. Now this is a less than or equal to. So if you see a less than or equal to, you can probably assume it's going to come together because it's less than. And we know that we're going to have filled in circles. Let's go ahead and solve this. First step to solving this is we're going to look for a GCF, right? And in this case, my GCF is going to be 3. So I'm going to pull out a 3 from both of these. And I'm going to get an x squared minus 9 with a 3 in front is less than or equal to 0. Now, that x squared minus 9 is a perfect square binomial. And so that means that I can factor it out. I can do the square root of x plus the square root of 9 times the square root of both of those rewritten as x minus 3. So listen, remember, go back and look at the difference of squares lesson if you don't remember this, but it's x plus 3 times x minus 3. Okay, then we take both of those and we set both of those equal to 0. I set x plus 3 and set that equal to 0. Take x minus 3 and set that equal to 0, and we solve. Minus 3 to both sides, and we get x equals negative 3. Add 3 to both sides here, and we get x equals positive 3. So those are my two answers. Now, we got to put those two on a number line and decide which way we're going. We have a negative 3 here. I have a positive 3 here. I know I'm going to have a closed circle on both of them. But now I got to figure out, are we going to come together or are we going to go apart? So I'm going to plug in 0 back into my original equation. So here's my original equation. And I'm going to plug in 0 and see if it's true. Well, 0 squared is 0. 0 times 3 is 0. So we have negative 25 is less than or equal to 2. And hey, look, negative 25 is less than or equal to 2. So wherever 0 is, that's where we're going to fill in. And 0 is in between negative 3 and 3. So we're going to fill in between those two. So now let's write my set and my interval notation. For my set notation, I'm going to write all numbers of x such that x is greater than or equal to negative 3 and x is less than or equal to positive 3. Now my interval notation. For my interval notation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go brackets, negative 3, comma, positive 3, and close off those brackets. So hopefully you remember, brackets means it's equal to, parentheses means it's not equal to, closed circle equal, and we're just going to get some more practice doing all this. Okay, so let's turn the page and let's jump here to number 3. So number 3, we have negative 2x squared plus 12x is less than 10. So first step, get everything to one side. So I'm going to minus 10 to this side, minus 10 to this side, and I'm going to get negative 2x squared plus 12x minus 10 is less than 0. Okay, then I'm going to go through and I'm going to factor. First step in factoring is looking for my GCF. My GCF on this one is a negative 2. I'm going to teach you a trick right now. If your GCF is a negative, you're going to flip the inequality sign. Okay? Just trust me on this. I know I told you in the past it's only when you divide both sides by a negative, but if your GCF is a negative, we're also going to flip it. So my GCF is a negative 2. We're going to divide each one of these by a negative 2. Now that means that I'm going to need to flip my inequality symbol here. Okay? Flip your inequality symbol to be a greater than. So now let's rewrite our answer. It's going to be negative 2 in front times x squared minus 6x plus 5 is greater than or equal to 0. Remember, we do not want my a to be negative, so we rewrite it like this. Okay, now we factor. Remember, this -2 is not your a, so we don't have to worry about it in factoring. So I'm just going to write my factors for this one, since I don't have an a in front, since we just have an a of 1. So I'm going to write -2 times x minus, x x minus 5, keep writing the wrong one. We're going to go x minus 5 times x minus 1. -5 times -1 is +5. -5 plus -1 is -6. Okay? So these are my factors. We're going to take both of these. We're going to take this one and this one. We're going to set them both equal to 0 so I can get my important points. Okay, but now that my sign is flipped, this is probably an OR problem, right? So we're going to probably go out, but we're still going to check. So we're going to take x minus 5 and set that equal to 0, and I'm going to take x minus 1 and set that equal to 0. We're going to add 5 to both sides. We're going to get x equals 5, and I'm going to add 1 to both sides, and I'm going to get x equals 1. So here are my two answers. So now I'm going to draw my line. I'm going to put both of these points on the line. I'm going to put 1 and I'm going to put 5. And in this case, I'm going to keep both of these open circles because it is just greater than and there is no equal to. Then I'm going to plug in a 0 into my original equation. I'm going to go -2 times 0 squared plus 12 times 0 is less than 10 and see if it works out. Well, this makes 0, this makes 0, so it's just 0 is less than 10. Is 0 less than 10? Yes. So wherever 0 is on here, it's below 1. That's where we shade in. So I'm going to shade to the left. And I'm going to shade to the right. Okay? And we're not going to shade in the middle. So now let's write my set and my interval notation. So my set notation, we're going to do all numbers of x such that x is less than 1 or x is greater than 5. Okay? So there is my set notation. My interval notation is going to be -infinity to 1 with parentheses, union, parentheses, 5 to positive infinity. Okay, let's take a look here at number 4. Number 4 I'm going to go quick on. All we're going to do is we're going to go x squared minus x minus 12 is less than or equal to, is less than 0. And I'm just going to write my factors. Look, I have no GCF. And so my factors are just going to be x minus 4 times x plus 3 is less than or equal to 0. -4 times 3 is -12. -4 plus 3 is -1. So there are my factors. So we're going to set both of those equal to 0. X minus 4 equals 0, and x plus 3 equals 0. Add 4 to both sides, we get x equals 4. Minus 3 to both sides, we get x equals -3. On my number line here then, we're going to put a point at -3. We're going to put a point at 4. I'm going to circle both of these because it's just less than. Since it is less than, this is probably going to be an and problem, right? So we're probably going to come together. But let's check. Let's plug 0 into my original equation. Let's go 0 squared minus 0 minus 12 and see if that's less than 0. Well, 0 minus 12 is -12. Is -12 less than 0? Yes. So wherever 0 is, which is right in the middle, is the true one, and we're not going to fill in the ones on the outside. So we're just going to fill in the one in the middle. So for my set notation, it's going to look like this. It's going to be all numbers of x such that x is greater than -3 and x is less than 4. Interval notation, remember we were using parentheses on this one because it is not equal. So we're going to go parentheses -3, comma 4. Lastly, number 5. Number 5, let's write the solution set for this one. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move this 15x over to this side. So we're going to get a negative 3x squared minus 15x minus 18 is greater than 0. Next, we're going to pull out my GCF. And my GCF for this one's going to be negative 3. Because I do not want my a here to be negative. So we're going to pull out a negative 3 from this one. But remember, look at all this dividing by negative 3 that I'm doing. So I need to flip this sign to a less than, right? Okay, so we have a negative 3x and negative 3 out in front. We're going to have an x squared plus 5x plus 6 is less than 0. Since this is a less than symbol after we've done my GCF, this is probably an and problem, right? It's probably coming together, okay? All right, so now we're going to write my factors. Here's my factors, x plus 3 times x plus 2. If you don't remember how to factor, make sure you go back and watch the factoring lesson, okay? A lot of this builds on each other. It's less than 0. So here are my two things, x plus 3 and x plus 2. We're going to rewrite both of these factors. Set them both equal to 0. X plus 3 equals 0. X plus 2 equals 0. And so we're going to get my two answers. X equals negative 3 and x equals negative 2. Okay, so on my number line, we're going to have a point at negative 3 and we're going to have a point at negative 2. I am going to circle both of these. And now we need to decide, are they going to come together or apart? So we plug 0 back into my original equation. We go negative 3. We go negative 3 times 0 squared minus 18 is greater than 15 times 0. Okay, that just makes 0. So we just have a negative 18 is greater than 0 times 15 is just 0. So is negative 18 greater than 0? No. So wherever 0 is, and 0 is over here, it's not that. So it's not going to be this side either, and we're just going to fill in the middle. So for my set notation, it's just in the middle here, and so it's just going to be between negative 3 and 2, so I'm going to go all numbers of x such that x is greater than negative 3 and x is less than negative 2. For my interval notation, it's going to be parentheses, negative 3, comma, negative 2. All right, guys, I hope this has been helpful to you. Remember, if you have any questions at all, do not hesitate to ask, and good luck on your homework today. Have a good day.